didn't get your popcorn yet, good afternoon, good afternoon. This is Dr. Selma Bartholomew from Partner with Legacy, Dr. B. If you did not get your popcorn yet, this is your chance as we're welcoming our community. Thank you for joining us for our community conversations with leaders. I have been looking forward to this discussion. So we will be talking today about transforming criminal justice. We have a dynamic panel with us. We have Destiny Hamilton, the leader, Destiny Hamilton from Life Camp, Dr. George Hewan from Fairfax County Schools, and leader Jerome Inniss, true veteran leader who have years of experience in corrections. So for those of us joining, thank you so much for making time for us. I'm Dr. B. And we are excited to have you be a part of this conversation. If you're new to our community, yes, you do get a chance to participate. So you can ask questions in the comments section, and I will make sure and make time for that. And thank you in advance for liking and subscribing to the channel. So this conversation for us today, we know that we are in the midst of a pandemic, of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are very much aware of the challenges that our communities are facing in light of the pandemic. But even before the pandemic, we were dealing with issues around violence in our communities. And so in this time, and we wanted to be able to create a space to have an open dialogue and a discussion about criminal justice, about the reform. And we could tear down the walls, but we also want to build bridges. What are the things that we need to do collaboratively as a community? So for those who are joining us, thank you so much for making time. And I'm going to get right into it. So I'm going to first ask, and let me welcome each panel member first. They'll get a chance to introduce themselves. And I always start with an opening question. So everyone is also aware that we just had an election, and we have a new president-elect Biden and Harris. So I'm gonna ask Dr. George Hewan from Fairfax County Schools, a dynamic leader doing some wonderful work with his students around and his community around social justice, to introduce himself and to tell us, Dr. Hewan, tell us what you think should be the approach for the Biden-Harris around criminal justice in light of the work that you are doing within schools. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Dr. B, for having me. Yes, my name is Dr. George Hewan. I'm an assistant principal with Fairfax County Public Schools. I've been a school administrator for about 3 years now. So again, I appreciate the space to chat with you today. And then going back to the question, I'm actually going to tell a short anecdote. So there's a teacher by the name of Carmen Gardner. Carmen Gardner he's an art teacher. And so he recently got his stimulus check, right? So we think about our stimulus check and the many things that we could have done with our stimulus check. Me personally, I saved it, right? I put mine in my savings account. But Carmen Gardner started a nonprofit organization. And his nonprofit organization teaches kids how to fish. So when we think about fishing, right, that's really a skill that we are asking a lot of our kids to bring into the workforce or the college arena or the military. Skills such as like being resilient, planning, assessing, collaborating, and communicating. And so what Carmen Gardner did was he looked at his community and he said to his scholars and his students is that you're bigger than, sports, you're bigger than entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I think they're all great things to do. But his message to his community was like, I want you to have more experience. So I think, with the Biden administration, we have to get back to those programs that have benefited so many of our kids, those after school programs, those musics, the art programs that is going to give our students, that's going to allow them to expand their minds. And I also think about the data that came out a few weeks ago where the federal government reported that more than 3 million students are missing from the fall enrollment compared to our spring data.
That's
And
right.
I just wonder how many of those kids are Black and brown. And we know that in 2 or 3 years, a lot of those kids are going to be missing from the graduation data, right? And so we have to get back into those vulnerable communities, and we have to look at some of the states and the school districts that are implementing some of those year-round schools. And we
Yeah.
have to implement those things because that is one of the ways that I believe that we can close some of the educational or racial, I call it the racial gap,
Yeah.
when it comes to our learners.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hewan. And so I heard two very solid strategies in terms of doing the work and engaging and coming up with creative ways in order to engage our young people. I am excited to introduce leader Destiny Hamilton, a powerhouse of a youth leader. She makes me feel very confident that everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right because our youth, right? They have the energy, but also to have the vision and to be willing to do the hard work. So Destiny is currently with Life Camp. What a powerful organization, the work that they're doing around gun violence in the community and engaging young people. And she will also share her leadership work with the NAACP. So Destiny, from Dr. B's heart to your heart, I so appreciate you joining us. So please introduce yourself and tell us after your introduction, what should be the Biden-Harris approach as we consider how to reduce the prison population and how to better engage our youth.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Dr. B. My name is Destiny Hamilton. I am a John Jay College of Criminal Justice alumni. I graduated last year with my political science degree, and I now work as the Youth Education and Career Coordinator at Life Camp Inc. We're an anti-gun violence organization. We're located in Southeast Queens, and I'm also in the NAACP. I serve as the Secretary for the Jamaica Youth Council and the President for the New York State Youth and College Division. And I think that the approach that Biden and Harris should take to reducing the prison population, I think that they need to make drastic changes to the criminal justice system. And I think that it first starts with limiting the privatization of prisons, right? Because the prison industrial complex, I think that's played a major, major role in the prison population that we have today, because the more private prisons, the more prisoners, because these people, they want as many people incarcerated as possible for their own profit and their own benefit. So I think that they need to start with that. And I will also say that I think that we need to take police out of schools, because I know we've all seen so many videos that have gone viral of police officers in schools and Black and brown kids being brutalized. Just last week, I saw a video of a girl who went to get some fresh air and she was subjected to police brutality. And when you have police in school, I feel as though it intimidates the youth and it doesn't really foster a good learning environment. It just further criminalizes youth. And when you feel pushed out of school, that's what kind of leads to quote unquote criminal behavior that they say a lot of our kids inhabit. I will also say that they need to place more organizations such as Life Camp in communities across the country, because Life Camp Inc., for those who don't know, it's part of the crisis management system. And that's a group of organizations that look at violence as a social disease that needs to be cured. So they're really proactive in stopping violence and mediating beef between people. That's a really good alternative to policing, because the police are mostly reactive and organizations such as Life Camp are proactive and they work with the community. So I think that they need to start putting more organizations like Life Camp in communities across the country.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you can find Life Camp. Can you tell us the website for Life Camp? Because it's not a Life Camp. It starts differently.
It's long. It's www.peaceisAlifestyle.com.
Okay, peace is a lifestyle.com. Thank you so much, Leader Hamilton. And I'm honored to also have an experienced and proven leader in the correction system, Mr. Jerome Inniss. And he has the years of experience of working in the system, but also being part of community and working to be part of the change. And so for us, this discussion is important for us because I think we have to have everybody at the table, and we have to begin to see, right, what is it that individuals know and understand about work, being in the system, being out the system, and to begin to bridge that communication piece. So I'm honored to have you, Mr. Inniss. I know you came out of retirement. Dr. B was like, you got to come spend some time with us. So for those who are joining us, let me welcome Mr. Inniss to the conversation, let you introduce yourself and tell us what should be the Biden-Harris approach to reducing our prison populations and to now addressing crime and also wellness in our community.
Well, Dr. B, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. As I said, I've retired in last year in January, and what I've been in corrections for 36 years. After 36 years, I've been in corrections for 36 years, my career, and I've seen everything. I started off when we were giving prisoners a pencil and a piece of paper. Now they have now they have tablets. They're walking around with tablets now. So we have improved over the 36 years that I've been in this working in corrections, and it's amazing on how far we've come. We've reduced the prison population significantly. A lot of it had to do with COVID, and we reduced it down to, I started with over 70,000 prisoners. We're down to probably 30,000 right now. It's significant, huge reductions in the prison system. I'm from the community, as you point out, New York City, and what the Biden approach, I believe what they should do is with the bail reform and all the things that we're doing now, they should make sure it's nationalized. Everything, they should put a task force together with outcome measures and put everybody together and make sure that we have consistency in our criminal justice system. The approach that Destiny just spoke about, I like what she's talking about with the police and schools. That started with Columbine back in the prison,
yes,
the school to prison pipeline. They're arresting our children for any little thing, and they're coming and they're getting into the criminal justice system very early. And the Biden-Harris agenda should be to look at all of that and take a comprehensive approach, national approach to stopping, or to, maybe counselors or something more, not police, not the uniform.
yes.
I think we should watch, take a look at that. So that's what I believe.
No, I appreciate that. And I hear this, I like the idea of saying that it has to be a national initiative. Certainly we know that since Nixon, this war on drugs has criminalized our young people, right? 50 years of this war on drugs and feeding the prison population and this economy. While we say there's a school to prison pipeline, we also need an economic agenda. So for us, in our work, it is helping our schools to make schools a place of purpose and a place of passion, but we also need an economic agenda. Our children are home right now without income. When the COVID hit, it was immediate. The Mayor Bill de Blasio said, oh, we're gonna suspend summer youth. And so that level of creative thinking that Leader Hamilton is pointing to, we need to be more creative in terms of engaging our young people. I want to go back to Dr. Hewan. Can you tell us a little bit about Fairfax and some of the challenges that you see that the young people in your community are facing, and some of the work that you've been engaged with around social justice in your community, Dr. Hewan?
Yeah, thank you. I think some of the challenges that our kids have been facing is that Now information is at the palm of their hands, right? So I think in my generation coming up, our parents used to tell us, how to go to school, how to act, how to behave and things like that. But now, as Destiny mentioned earlier, like they're able to see these incidents on their cell phones of being treated unfairly or being harassed. And I think schools have done a good job at replicating, some of that prison system in some of our prisons. As when kids come into the building, they're under surveillance. As kids walk throughout the halls without a pass, they're suspicious. Or if they're loud in the cafeteria, then I may need to go and, stand next to them because they're acting not normal, or they're breaking like cultural norms within our building. And so I think the students recognize that now. And so that's another burden, and that's another weight that they're bringing to the schools with them, knowing that they're not being treated fairly, and that, for a lack of better words, that sometimes people may be out to get them. But I think we have more folks in the buildings now that are, we're rooting for our kids. We have, implemented the restorative justice practices where we are reducing our suspension rates. I'm sorry, the sun's glaring on my face. Reducing some of the suspensions. We're doing things such as in-school suspensions to keep our kids in the building, because we know that when they're at home, they're not getting anything done. So it's more so of just trying to hear them out, work with them, help them to problem solve, help them to learn from their mistakes, and teach them. We got to get back to being educators and not, these enforcers. And that's why I love education. That's why I love to share the information, share the research, because the research speaks for itself. We're not making these things up. And so because there's a plethora of research out there on implicit bias, discrimination, perceptions of students of colors, how students perceive teachers, you put all that stuff in front of them and you can't argue that research.
Wow, thank you so much. And thank you for, I think what you're getting to is also mindset about how we see our children and how we relate to them and build relationship with them. And those things have been ingrained as we think about all the movies and all the teaching movies. There's always that person with the quote unquote big stick, right? Who's going to go into the cafeteria and who's going to, bring law and order into our classroom space. I also want to be honest, and I do recognize that the violence that our children are experiencing is real. And working in schools, in terms of what Destiny mentioned, in terms of the access when children come in and they're under surveillance, sometimes most parents don't know that. Sometimes it takes a good hour and a half, 2 hours for the kids to go through the metal detectors, right? By the time they take off their pant belts and all of those different issues. But on the same hand, when we talk with kids, they also say, I want to feel safe. I want to feel like if I can actually feel safe. And so if we don't put in the work, then we're not going to be able to get to that place in terms of safety. So, Leader Hamilton, if you can tell us a little bit about some very concrete things that you've been doing in Life Camp around trauma and around helping the young people that you work with deal with their anger and come and kind of build those relationships with you.
Yeah, sure. I think that when we talk about trauma, it's a little difficult because there's like not one correct answer to help someone heal with trauma, because everyone heals in different ways and at their own pace. But what I've found is that ultimately, like people who experience trauma, whether it be because of violence, the problems they may be facing at school, loved ones being incarcerated, things like that, they just want to feel secure and they want to feel safe and they want to feel loved. So some of the things that we offer at Life Camp, we offer therapeutic services such as yoga, meditation, mental health services, beef mediation that they may be having with people. The things that Mr. Hewan spoke about, they're very true. A lot of the youth who I interact with, they tell me about just the different problems that they have at school, how they don't feel safe because of this reason or that reason, and how the online schooling is actually very difficult. And some of them even tell me that their teachers, they feel like their teachers just don't care. That's never a good thing. So we always try to talk to them as much as possible, just have these close connections with them and have like daily checkups, like, so how was school today? And what can I help you with? And we would like to start having a process where we can allow certain youth to come into our space that may not be able to focus doing the remote learning from home, where they can come into our space and it could just be quiet and they can just learn and receive help if they need it.
I love the idea of just the wellness check piece, and you're absolutely correct. This question this morning on our Legacy Ed News, we were talking about equity, and there's so many children who may not even have access to the resources, but also when you're home and you're in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, you're there with your little brothers and your little sisters. And a lot of them are not turning on their cameras. And they also have maybe educators themselves who are not turning on their cameras. And we work with our teachers to say to them, we have to say to our kids, yeah, I want a wellness check. Can you turn your camera on? Let me just do a wellness check. Let me see you. And to begin to create that space. And so I'm happy to hear that we want to hear alternatives as we engage with the mayor's office, because I think that is the issue that so many parents today are facing. Schools have closed in-person learning, and what about our kids to have options, like Life Camp? Mr. Inniss, I'm going to go to you because you have a long history of also working with suicide prevention in corrections and helping deal with recovery and some of those issues. So I just wanted to hear, what is it that you find in terms of the role of corrections in helping those who come through that system deal with recovery and coming back into community? What were some of your lessons learned about some of the mental issues and challenges faced?
Well, there's a lot of lessons, Dr. B. When I came in, mental health units didn't even exist. It was tragic. Inmates were hanging up left and right. They separation from family, they could not take it. And it was horrible. Since then, as the corrections evolved, we have mental health units. And we've trained correctional officers. They have to go through 8 hours of training every year, those who work on that mental health unit, and to identify what is a mental health problem. They can, once they identify, they can notify a supervisor, and we'll put that person on a one-to-one watch and make sure that they don't hang themselves, and we can do that instantly. It doesn't matter, overtime, whatever. That has changed since I started the department. So mental health is improved tremendously. We have our suicides have been reduced. I would say probably over 70% when I was there. A lot.
I love the fact that you mentioned family. And
yes.
And the fact that a lot of the issues were arising as a result of not being able to connect with family. And part of our discussion for doing this today is, I don't think people realize, if you've never worked with someone who is part of the juvenile justice system or the correction system, oftentimes the individual, they've most likely burnt that bridge to family and may not have it. They do, some of them do. But oftentimes this is such a strain on their family, and they feel guilty and they feel shame and they feel all of those things. And so we need to be able to be honest about that. Mr. Inniss, you wanted to comment before I go back to Dr. Hewan?
Yes, we have a huge system. And to what you said, Dr. B, is very true. We have a huge system that goes all the way up to the Canadian border. It's expensive for family members to come up there. It's a 2-day trip. And that's spent overnight, the money to get there. So a lot of these inmates do not have family coming up to see them. So they separate, and that's devastating to them. And they do not just suicides, they do things that you wouldn't believe. They rebel against staff, and we are training staff to understand that, to de-escalate. 36 years ago, there was no de-escalation. Now we're de-escalating. we recognize the symptoms, we get them help, and it's been improved tremendously. And I want to talk about what Dr. Hewan was saying. My sister is an educator, and she constantly is telling me about the students that don't have the tools to sit still, don't have the tools to learn, in that environment where the teacher's not there remotely. And I think our kids are going to fall behind further, as Dr. Hewan mentioned, and yes. It's bad. It really is a shame. But our reaction part has moved a lot.
And that's why we're having the conversation. We can't wait until it ends up being, as Dr. Hewan saying, 3 years when they don't show up for graduation. So Dr. Hewan, you've done a lot of work around factors that contribute to young people after they've dropped out, coming back and checking into seeking out educational outcomes, right? When someone is either dropped out or at a space when they're on the fringes. So can you share a little bit about what you found were the factors that help someone check back in to and to begin to seek help from either an organization like Destiny's or from a member of the community?
Sure, and thank you for that comment. Yeah. So two factors that I learned, when I was doing my research and dissertation on looking at some of those factors that brought high school dropouts back to school. Number one was the economic factor. So we have our Black and brown students or scholars, high school dropouts, working at certain different jobs. And they're working at these jobs for years. And they're starting to realize that folks are passing them by. They're not getting these promotions that they felt like they earned based on the years of experience. And so they realized that it was based on your educational background. And so they're having these conversations of, what do I do next? How do I not be stuck in this environment for the next 10 or 15 years? And so that's one of the major things that causes our Black and brown or our high school dropouts to go back to school. And then another thing is their kids, right? So you think, or they may think about their experience with school, their experience with their teachers, why they dropped out, not having like a role model in school, or not having someone in the building that they could connect with, or someone who was checking in with them. And so to be able to navigate school was difficult for them. And so as loving parents, we have that belief that our generation should get smarter. And so when we look at our kids, we don't want them to go through some of the struggles that we went through. We want to be able to go in and have a parent-teacher conference and know what they're talking about. We want to be able to help our students with their homework. We want to be able to advocate and know how to advocate for our students or our children. And so those are the two factors that I learned of the reasons why our high school dropouts decide to go back. They look at the economic factor, and then they look at the factors around their children and being able to support their children.
Wow, economics and legacy, right? What is it that they will have as they look forward? Leader Hamilton, in your work with Life Camp and with NAACP, you're working very closely with young people as well. And oftentimes when people see our youth, they don't necessarily know how to build that relationship with them, and they don't know how to communicate with them. And we have not necessarily taught our youth how to communicate with us. And so what is it that you have found that the young people that you work with, what do they want from us as community? What do we need? What is it that they're telling you that we need to do differently to get to know them and to build that relationship with them?
I would say, well, as a young person in my experience working with youth, oftentimes when we're discussing like intergenerational relationships and adult youth relations, I think a common topic would be like understanding. because us as youth, we're not perfect. We make mistakes, and I'm gonna just be like really honest. Our generation, they're hard-headed, and they want to do things their way, even if it's not the correct thing. We want to do things our way. So I feel as though more adults, if they want to connect with young people, then they just have to be understanding that we want to handle certain situations in certain ways. Like when you look at the recent protests, which I was involved in a lot, and you see the riots and people cursing out the police, it's some of these actions aren't okay. But I think people just have to realize that people are going to handle situations in the way they see best fit. I'm also going to be honest, I don't go to a lot of my community board meetings or any community board meetings like that in general anymore, because what I found when I would go to those meetings, when they had the segment where they would be interacting with the police officers, a lot of the elders, they would be on the calls and they would be like complaining about the youth and the youth need to be this and they're too loud and they're this, that, and the third. And I feel as though that adds on to the problem that we have in our community with policing. And I didn't say anything in these meetings, of course, because I'm like, how do I check someone that's like, is my elder. I have to respect them. But I think just understanding and just realizing that, like you were young at one point. You did certain things. Young people, they have a lot going on too, and they want to cope with things, whether it be hanging out with their friends. Unfortunately, whether it be, using certain drugs or substances, that shouldn't be a reason to like criminalize them and, go complain to the cops. So I would just say understanding, and on both parts too, us as youth, we have to be understanding of why adults, interact with us the way they do, because they have experienced it and they don't want you to go through, some of the same struggles and issues that they went through.
I love that. She's telling us stop bad mouthing our youth. I'm gonna be honest with her. She's literally telling us stop bad mouthing our young people, right? And especially when they're next to you, literally. Thank you so much for that honesty, because you can't build relationships. You cannot build relationships in that way. What I have found also is that I think we also have to be able to let them know that you're absolutely right, that we're not perfect as well as parents and as adults, and that boundaries that you're saying is very different than our generation and how they grew up. You had to stay in line because there was Jim Crow and there were all of these other things and systems that were put on you. And so we now have this freer, boundary-less, generation, but we also need them to understand, right, and to make sense of our goals for them. In my community here in the Bronx, and I'm pretty sure in other communities, what I'm feeling right now is that our kids are very idle. They're home and they're absolutely not being engaged. And we as a community, this is why this conversation is so important to us as a company, as we do the work with our schools. We have to take the risks now to figure out how to get to know our children, how to do something different. So Dr. Hewan, when you mentioned fishing, I thought, how cool is that? Right? Well, why can't we now do tennis? Why can't we, do some things that we can social distance in tennis, and our kids are home not learning and not doing certain things. And these are unique job opportunities. So I want to see that level of creative thinking and tap in resources and listening to young people and figuring out how do we engage them. Mr. Inniss, I have a question for you about the walls. And for those, before I get to your question, for those who are just joining us, thank you so much for being a part of our Community Conversations webinar. This is actually part one of a two-part series on transforming corrections and juvenile justice. And we're talking about building bridges back to family. So please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, get a Gmail account if you don't have one, to be able to subscribe to YouTube. I want to talk a little bit, Mr. Inniss, about building the wall from corrections to community. What are some concrete things that we can do to take the wall down, but to build a bridge? If you're, working, if you have somebody who's in the correction system right now, a lot of them are part of our community and they want the leadership. So what would you like to see us as a community? What do they want us to know about, working in corrections, and that would help us to build a better relationship with them if we are to move forward and continue to evolve? I love that word, evolve. Mr. Inniss?
Well, hello?
Yes.
I would like the community to know that our employees really care about the inmates in our facilities. And I work with some great employees, and they are really, really, truly care to make sure that they have community ties. They make the extra efforts. Also, what we're doing now, as I said before, we have the tablets, and inmates could now interact with their community members through videos. They could actually see their child take their first steps, through a 30-second video. This didn't exist. I'm talking about nowhere close to it. Our department was very slow to get into the internet. They could have drug treatment through that tablet. And the possibilities are now endless, especially with the COVID. And the inmates coming in now, they're youth, and they're used to tablets. They're used to these tools. And now they have them. They could read books. They can go to college. We have college programs. We have so many programs. We have vocational programs. These inmates come in not knowing how to do anything. They leave, some of them leave with even master's degrees. We have a master's degree program in Sing Sing. We have associate's degrees. We have high school education, air conditioning, refrigeration, you name it. They can learn a skill. Some of them come out, they start their own businesses. So things have changed, and it's amazing how it has changed. And as a community, we have to support it. Come up and visit. If someone's in prison, a family member, make that effort to come and visit. It means so much to them to see their family come up. Bring their children. If your mother bring their kids, it means so much to them. We have a Puppies Behind Bars program. Have you heard of that? Puppies Behind Bars?
I did not know we had a Puppies Behind Bars program. That's pretty cool.
It's cool. Oh my God. You got to see it. The specially trained inmates train these puppies to help our veterans with PTSD.
Wow.
These puppies have to know 90 commands before they graduate. 90 commands. They can do everything. They can clear the house. They can turn on the lights. They can get a beer out your refrigerator if you want them to. But how does that help the inmate? How does that help the inmate? He or she, because we have in both male and female prisons, they can start their own business.
Yes.
You have to actually practically get a degree in canine to get this program. They can start their own business. It's endless, and it's such a great program.
I think what you're enlightening us to, which is really important, is that there are initiatives that are there, right? And it's up to us now as a community to create the space to now let it thrive when they return home. So yeah, I could train you to be a business, but when I come home, if there's no economic setup engine in the community to allow you to set up a business and to thrive, right. For those who are new to this webinar, they've heard me say many times, I'm a Black-owned business, and Black and Latinx businesses in New York State only make 2%. So the challenges that we're facing as we look to this moment in history with the Biden-Harris administration has to be an economic one as well. Because if you train me to do this work with puppies and with PTSD, and we have so many veterans and things like that, I've not seen that in my neighborhood in the Bronx. I've not seen any pop-up shop that says, right, here is a training site. And so we need to know these things so that we now need to ask our politicians in terms of, what that agenda should look like and feel like. I'm going to ask you, Leader Hamilton, can you share a little bit about your work with the NAACP and the college and career work that the NAACP Youth Division does? Because then I think that also matters to be able to know What is out there? Because I feel like if there are things out, but how do we truly connect to it in a cohesive way to support our young people?
Yeah, sure. So one of our game changers is economic empowerment. And so there's a bunch of youth and college division branches across the country. My branch, we've had like young entrepreneur fairs where we had young Black business owners come and just tell everyone about their brand, sell their products and things of that nature, and other economic initiatives. But I think the biggest one that the NAACP has is on the national level. We have our Axo Awards. It's a really long acronym. I don't even remember it. But basically there's these different categories. From culinary arts, music, writing, poetry, science, engineering, and the youth across the country, they compete in these different categories to make it to the nationals. When they make it to nationals, they compete against other people as well. And if they win, do you hear a siren in my back?
I do.
Sorry.
All right.
So if they win, whether it be first, second, or third place, it gives them opportunities, scholarships, thousands of dollars upon scholarship, full ride scholarships, connects them with people in that industry. I think that is one of the greatest things that the NAACP does, because it allows you from like these very small cities and communities across the country to elevate their skills at an early age. Because I believe you have to be in junior, I believe you have to be in middle school to high school in order to receive these awards. So those kind of things set them in place for what they want to do in the future. And I think that we need more things like that across the country that empowers these youth to do different things other than just, like sports and music, which is, as Mr. Hewan said, that's also important as well. But yeah, it challenges them to want to compete in categories such as like science and writing and math and things.
Thank you for that. And I think what you're doing, which is why we're having the webinar series, is you're changing our paradigm and our minds and our mindsets about what we think an organization, the work an organization engages with. So if anybody you're listening to this as part of our audience, if you're in a school, if you're a principal, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, right, you need an NAACP chapter in your school. You're looking around and you're saying our young people are not engaged, they're not doing things, and you're bad mouthing them. Stop bad mouthing them and find out how do you go about establishing a chapter within your school building and putting in the work, engaging them to support them. Go ahead, Destiny.
Also, to Mr. Inniss' point, we also have prison chapters across the country as well. So in those prison chapters, they do the same advocacy that we do out here pertaining to our 5 game changers.
Excellent. Dr. Hewan, I see you nodding and wanting to jump in. Do you want to share about your social justice club and work in Fairfax and some of the work you've been engaged in, and how did you go about establishing it, and especially with parents, because I know that is an important piece. We haven't even touched that. How do we get parents involved and concretely involved in supporting our young people in this discussion? Dr. Hewan?
Sure, thanks. Following the murder of George Floyd, we opened up about 3 different town hall meetings. We did one with our staff to kind of assess their anxiety and mental health and just their emotions. We did the same with our parents, and then we did the same with our students. And so in those 3 town hall meetings over the course of several months, we learned that there is still racism in our school. We learned that, folks still hold these biases towards certain group of students. We know that our Asian students feel targeted. So we learned a lot of information about our school, and we learned how, people were feeling. And so we created the social justice book club, or club, because book clubs, you can go to your local library. So we call it a social justice club, where we are working with our families, we're working with our teachers, and collectively we're reading How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. We meet once a month, the third Thursday. So after I'm done here, I'm going to jump off and get into our social justice club. But it's building partnerships with our families. It's giving them a voice, and it's helping us to find ways to work with a greater community. So I'm proud of the work that we're doing within our community, and I'm proud of the approach that Woodson has taken to combat racism and to give our students a voice, to give our parents a voice, and most importantly, to give our teachers a voice, because I think many times schools get caught up in the fact that only the administrators can make the decisions, and it's time that we move away from that and honor student voice and their concerns, because they're bringing valid concerns to us. And it's kind of like what Miss Destiny just spoke about, listening to our youth. We don't just we also have to put ourselves in their shoes and get down to their level if we're going to have any success with them.
Thank you for that. And all of these strategies that we're hearing, I love the fact that you took the time to listen and not just make the assumption that you knew what the answer would be, right? That if you take the time to engage in a town hall, and you did this in the middle of COVID as well, correct?
That is correct. We did this in the middle of COVID. We did open up our school one day on a Saturday, and we just brought in our staff and we walked around the track. We put 8 minutes and 46 seconds on, and together we walked and we healed and we cried, and we just came together. That was just an event that we opened up to our staff and our faculty and staff. But it was just good to get folks out of their homes. We have some older staff who they couldn't go down to DC and do the protest, but they wanted to participate in a different way, and so we gave them that outlet to do it here on our track. So it was a beautiful thing, something that I'll never forget, an experience that I'll never forget. And like I said, I'm just glad that we were able to just put everything on pause and listen to folks.
And I thank you for that leadership piece, and also just being very concrete about what could we do? What can we do as a community? So that's a great way for those as we're coming back. We've closed in-person schools in here in New York City, but even as our principals and educators, if you're planning for September, that is a really excellent way to honor, and also a way in which to begin to build community. So for those who are listening and with us, you can also, if you're commenting on the channel piece, you can also send us a question. Dr. B does have access to it, and you can put any questions in the chat. I am wondering, Mr. Inniss, as you hear some of these strategies, and you've talked about some of the training that corrections go through, and I love the word that you've used, that we are evolving. And as corrections and evolving to increase the support and to get to better know both community as well as to, to get to know the needs of the young people. Can you share a little bit about how do they begin to also support the mental health of those who work in corrections? Because I think we talk about the inmate, right? Those individuals who are part of the system and their mental health issues, but what is the impetus, or what is the work that the corrections engage in to also facilitate the mental health and wellness of those who work in that system? And what would you like to see improved upon, if any, as we evolve?
Well, that's a very good question. Oftentimes our staff, the staff are, I wouldn't say ignored, but it's not looked at as what we are actually doing. When I was working, we're actually doing time as well. We with the inmate, we come in, we can't have cell phones, we cannot have any kind of computers. We're cut off completely. Our staff is cut off completely from the world for that 8 to 16 hours. And it can have an impact on your mental health. You are confined. And what I would like to see is more focus on that, more community focus, more groups from our supervisors, from the all the way up to the top, to the commissioners, to understand that mental health is a factor. I've been to a number of suicides from staff. And staff, and they commit suicide, and it's unfortunate. And because we need to do a better job, the department needs to do a better job. And I would like to see a task force on it to really focus and focus on it. We do have a program that if somebody hangs up, we can come together, and they got professionals that come in, mental health professionals, other staff members, and we sit around and we talk about what's happening, what's going on with them, so that they don't bring it home to their families, and so on and so forth. That's if something happens to either the inmate or us, that if the inmate commits suicide and it's on your housing unit, you could ask for that to be involved in that program that helps you to understand what happened, and so that you don't begin to deteriorate yourself. So yes, that's a very good question, and it needs to be addressed, Dr. B. It really does. And I would urge that.
As we think about changing the culture of policing and changing the culture, and that's that bridge that we're talking about, that, right? We're all in the same boat, and we have to be able to recognize, and I don't think I've ever heard it say that they're doing time. We see it much more about that person who's part of the criminal justice, but to be able to have that mindset that they, as the workers and as the team who are there to support, that they are also feeling like if they're doing time. And that's something we need to bring to the discussion with the Biden-Harris, with our leadership, because we won't change that culture. We won't change people's actions if they are also hurting. And if they're feeling like in pain, because you can't deal with another person's pain when you're in pain yourself. And we know that as we work with our educators, we work hard to build relationships with them. And we talk about, what are the things that you need to be doing as an educator to take care of your mental health, to take care of your wellness, to grow as a person? What are the things you should be reading? You can't give somebody a second chance if you haven't given yourself one. Let's just be very honest. Very honest about that. I know we're pushing to the end of our time, to our time together. For those who are with us, thank you so much. I just want to be able to now kind of reflect a little bit with the team. And as you think about this, one of the questions I like to ask as we come to a close is, I'm going to give you a sentence and you tell me what you think. So I'd like to say, if success, in order to do these things at the national level with the Biden-Harris team, at the local level with our elected officials, in order for us to do this, it's going to take the courage to do what? So success will take the courage to blank. Success takes the courage to do what? Who wants to jump in there? Dr. Hewan, success takes courage to do what? If we're going to make this happen.
Thank you. So again, as an educator, success takes courage to now be able to look at things through a racial lens. We have to do that in our educational system because our Black and brown kids are being disciplined disproportionately. So now let's look at things through a racial lens. You've been asking us for all these years to have a different lens. So now let's look at things through this racial lens.
Okay, so success takes the courage to look at things through a racial lens. I'm going to go to Mr. Inniss, and then I'm going to go to Leader Hamilton. Mr. Inniss, success takes the courage to blank.
Success takes the courage to include Black and brown people in the hierarchy of the department. Inmates, Black and brown inmates are the most that are incarcerated, and we don't have a seat at the table. Success means to bring us and promote us to have a seat at the table so that we can have the discussion be a part of the discussion, as to how we can bring our criminal justice system to where it needs to be, our correction system to where it needs to be, to empower our staff and take that step to include Black and brown staff, promote them so they could tell you or be a part of that conversation. And don't be afraid to do it. The world's not going to end. Correction's not going to end. We can do this, and we'll improve the inmates, and the inmate behavior, and the staff, and all around. That's what I believe.
Thank you for that. And before I get to Leader Hamilton, I'm reminding everyone, this is actually a two-part conversation on transforming correction. So I'm so glad you shared that, Leader Inniss. So for our next conversation, we have Dr. Michelle Darby, who works, with one of our juvenile detention schools, and Deputy Commissioner Molina, who we've invited to be a part of this discussion, because we want to hear what is being done, and also the shifting of the mindset. How are leaders in the system going about creating that culture so that we are at the table to begin to impact the change? And when you're at the table, you better have a voice too. And I know that, Leader Hamilton, I know you've got an answer. So tell us, success takes the courage to do what?
Success takes the courage to speak up. That's exactly what I was going to say. In whatever space or capacity you're in, because all of us panelists on today's webinar, we are all in different spaces of life. We've all had different jobs. And I'm pretty sure in all of our jobs, we've seen something that wasn't correct, or through schooling, through life, anything. And you have to have the courage to speak out and speak up. I know that's something that I struggled with when I first started school. When I would hear my professors say some crazy stuff, at first I'm like, do I say something? It wasn't until like my very last semester where I got comfortable with speaking out. And when you don't speak out, it can have real implications and real consequences, because someone else can hear that and they can go home thinking that that's correct. So success takes the courage to speak out whenever you hear something that's not correct or you see an injustice.
I love that. Thank you so much. As I reflect on the work and the work that we as a team and as a company have been engaged with, we certainly talk a lot about relationships and building relationships. But for us, this is also about outcomes and having some clear goals. And for us this year, it's about stop doing and start achieving. So we get sometimes so lost in just the doing and not achieving. And so I want to go to the question of changing the understanding of discipline. We have this very discipline-minded culture in terms of criminalizing our youth and criminalizing our community. But we also have to change and understand that discipline is also about looking at your goals and saying, what do I need to do to get to my goals? And me putting in the work and the sacrifices in order to do that. So it's going to be a sacrifice for us as the older generation to not badmouth our children, right? To kind of quiet ourselves and to be disciplined enough when they're with us to not badmouth them. We're going to have to say that all of the things that you shared around engaging community, talking to each other, crying together, Dr. Hewan, that mindset, that model that you just gave us about walking the track for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Thank you for sharing that. So I think we're going to have to now be disciplined and say, these are the things we need to do to get to our goals. And we have to now put in that work in order to make those steps in order to change outcomes for our children and for our communities. I want to say thank you to each member of the panel. Thank you to Destiny Hamilton. Destiny, can you just remind us one more time, where do we find Life Camp? And for those who are not familiar with Life Camp, please go to their website. They are doing some phenomenal work around gun violence in our communities, and they're based in Queens. So tell us one last time, Destiny, where do we find Life Camp? And also, where do we find the NAACP for those who want to start a chapter or learn more about it?
Okay, so for Life Camp, our website is www.peaceisAlifestyle.com. You can also find us on all social media at Life Camp Inc. And then for the NAACP, if you would like to get involved with the youth chapter, is www.naacpyc.org. And on Instagram is NAACPYC_.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sending you, I had to give you a virtual hug. Thank you for your voice, your contribution. I'm going to go next to Mr. Inniss. Thank you so much, Mr. Inniss, for your voice and for your contribution. Do you want to tell the audience where to find you? I know you retired. Dr. B can find you, but where do we find you on your social media and on your platform?
Well, you can find me on innissjerome@gmail.com. innissjerome@gmail.com.
Okay, and he's also on LinkedIn, so you can also find him.
LinkedIn. Oh, yes, that's right. I'm on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being so honest with us, Mr. Inniss, and sharing your experience and just being authentic about
Thank you.
what you do and to begin to bridge that communication. Dr. Hewan, I thank you so much. I want to be able to ask you where do we find you and to be able to support your work. And our heart goes out also, please, to the entire Fairfax County School District and community. And we are honored that you had the time to share with us today.
Absolutely, thank you. So you can find me at George Hewan at LinkedIn or on LinkedIn, and Dr. George Hewan on Twitter.
Excellent, excellent. So for those, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for being a part of our conversation. You can definitely find Partner with Legacy at Twitter and on our new LinkedIn page and also on our Facebook page, and also Dr. Selma B on Twitter. We invite you back to our next Community Conversations with Leaders webinar. If you did not get to see the Legacy Ed News this morning with Dr. Connolly, please check that out. We're planning on doing that every Thursday, the latest news and education. We're covering it for 10 minutes. And of course, on the Dr. Selma B show, we cover a range of life topics. I'm so honored and so blessed and to have had the chance to learn from all of you on the panel. And thank you again for your experience and for your expertise. And please have a happy Thanksgiving, a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. It was nice meeting
you. Thank you.
you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.